The deadly collision at LaGuardia Airport late last night has rattled travelers nationwide. Just before midnight, an Air Canada passenger jet slammed into a fire truck. The pilot and co-pilot of the plane died. At least 41 others were hospitalized. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating what led to the accident and why the fire truck was cleared to be on the tarmac as the plane landed. And all this comes as the nation's airports face increasing chaos due to the nearly 40-day shutdown of parts of the Department of Homeland Security, most notably the TSA. You are looking live at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, where thousands of people are snaking through security, waiting several hours throughout the day to do so. This scene's playing out at dozens of big airports nationwide as thousands of TSA workers are calling out, given they're still not being paid. They're set to miss another paycheck on Friday unless Congress acts. But TSA got help today from another agency, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Yes, the same agency causing the stare down between lawmakers and the White House over the future of immigration policy is now showing up at the airports to provide some relief. And at the White House, we asked Border Czar Tom Hanson, who helps oversee ICE and immigration policy, what exactly ICE is up to.
We're there to help the American people transit those lines that are taking hours because the Democrats shut the government down. Because the Democrats are punishing the men and women at TSA because they don't like immigration enforcement. They're punishing members of TSA, they're punishing members of the Coast Guard and CISA and FEMA, and they can open the government right now.
Will they be making immigration arrests at airports?
Their number one mission there, as the president said, is help TSA with security, help move the flow of people through those lines, because it is a tragedy what's happening at the airports right now with 3 and 4 hour delays. It's ridiculous. So we're there to help TSA and plug the holes. But if they see criminal activity, they're federal law enforcement officers. They should take action.
Well, that's not an explicit yes or no. It sounds like that could happen. You could see immigration-related arrests at an airport as those ICE agents are there. Now, look, we have all the angles of this covered tonight, from the deadly collision at LaGuardia with Tom Hanson in New York to TSA delays with Skyler Henry in Atlanta, and analysis from senior transportation correspondent Kris in Cleave in Los Angeles. But let's begin with Tom on the collision. So what are we learning this afternoon about the incident, Tom?
Hey there, Ed. Well, the latest is that LaGuardia is starting to open up. It actually began having flights take off around 2 p.m., but it is to the backdrop of this scene behind me, which is actually over this shoulder. I apologize. You can see that the crash here, that mangled wreckage, is still there. There is still personnel on scene who are parsing through all of the debris. They did obtain 2 black boxes, which will be essential in piecing together exactly what happened here. So here's what we know so far, Ed. We know that the truck was responding to another potential emergency, a United Airlines flight that reported that it had an odor on board, and it was cleared by air traffic control in order to pass the runway. That is runway 4 right behind me. It was cleared to pass there, and that is when it was hit by the plane CRJ 900 that had just landed from Montreal. This was a violent crash. If you take a look at the footage, the security footage from this crash, you can see that the plane traveling at 100 miles an hour T-boned that truck and basically crumpled it up while also destroying the nose of the plane, the wings of the plane, and jolting everyone on board, killing the 2 pilots as well. One perfect example of just how forceful this crash was. A flight attendant strapped to her seat fell through an opening in the severed aircraft, and they found her on the tarmac still attached to her seat. So that should tell you how violent of a crash this was. And I will say that there are several people, dozens of people who were taken to the hospital. Most of them have been released from Elmhurst, which is a nearby hospital, with minor breaks and bruises, bone breaks and bruises. And that is truly remarkable when you see this footage. It's a testament to how well these planes are built and generally how safe they are, even in light of the tragedy here. So as we look ahead, runway 4, we are just hearing, is going to reopen on Friday morning at 7 a.m. And as of now, the NTSB is on the ground. We watched them as they entered the scene, parsing through all of the debris to piece together just what went wrong here. But one of the central questions, of course, is that staffing issue at the air traffic controls. We know that air traffic controllers are chronically plagued with tight staffing issues. And so that's something that's certainly going to be at the center of this investigation, Ed.
And we will get to more on that with Kris Van Cleave in a moment. Tom Hanson there in Queens, we appreciate it. Let's go now to Skyler Henry down in Atlanta, where you have been seeing the long lines throughout the weekend and again today. Looks a little better right now. Walk us through what you've seen throughout the day at one of the world's busiest airports.
A lot better, Ed, compared to what we saw this morning even, where folks that we spoke with say that they were in line from 3, 4 in the morning for several hours hoping to make their flights that were later on in the afternoon. I'd say most of the queues that we saw for the portion of the morning died down somewhere in the middle of the afternoon, so much so to the point where people are getting through this main checkpoint here in about 30 to 45 minutes or so, maybe even less than that. And I think that a lot of people say that they are concerned about what travel looks like, because really this is a bit of a whack-a-mole game, right, in terms of the queues that we have seen at many of the airports across the country, not only here in Atlanta, but also Bush down in Houston, as well as the airport in New Orleans, even Newark, for example, seeing those long lines. We were here yesterday where folks told us that they were here in line for 5 and 6 hours, missed their flights, and then had to rebook all over again. So really a lot of logistical challenges for a lot of travelers here. We should point out, ICE officers are here as well. For the most part, they have been patrolling the terminals here, not really doing much as it relates to interacting with travelers for the most part. I think a lot of people were concerned in terms of the posture that these agents would bring to what they call hotspots, 14 airports all throughout the country at least. But for the most part, it has been relatively smooth throughout the day today. A lot of people are concerned what this looks like, especially as the number of TSA callouts continues to rise. It hit a high over the weekend yesterday, with Atlanta seeing more than 40% of TSA officers calling out. So certainly a lot of concerns here. A lot of officers say that they're concerned too, Ed, because they are on track to miss that second full paycheck on Friday.
Yeah, Skyler Henry did feel for those people who waited 5 or 6 hours only to miss the flight. We thank you for being there and appreciate reporting through the weekend and through today. So let's discuss all of this just complete transportation madness with a guy who covers it well, senior transportation correspondent Kris Van Cleave, who's out at LAX. Let's start with the situation at LaGuardia. NTSB is going to work through what exactly happened, but I know one of the things you've raised intrigue about today, at least, is staffing in that tower specifically.
Yeah, Ed, I think the NTSB is going to look at the totality of this accident, and you can't do that without really zeroing in on what was going on inside that air traffic control tower. When you listen to the audio of not only the event on runway 4, but the United flight that aborts its landing and then has an odor which turns into an emergency, and then even after the accident, where the same controller is now dispatching planes to various gates because the airport has been shut down, what you're struck by is it's one guy juggling a whole lot of stuff. And, as soon as that United plane aborts that landing and then suddenly starts having an odor issue, like the number of things that are going on that he's now juggling start to just multiply and multiply.
Kris, let's play that. Let's play that bit for people. Yeah, let's play this for people, because we have the audio of the moment the controller realizes what happened, and it's worth listening to. Let's take a listen.
That wasn't good to watch.
Yeah, I know I was here. I tried to reach out to my stuff, and we were dealing with an emergency earlier, and I messed up.
No, man, you did the best you could.
That is the controller who allowed the truck to pass through and the plane to land, correct? Who says I messed up.
Yes, that's our understanding. And this is fairly after the accident. So, this is a person who has just witnessed a very traumatic accident. In most circumstances, you would think you'd want to relieve that person with a different controller so the controller could take care of themselves, right? But this guy stayed on the job for quite some time after that accident, ensuring that the other planes got back to the gates safely. And that's, really a testament to that controller for holding it together. But it reinforces this question of, was he up there by himself? Now, the Secretary of Transportation today said that staffing wasn't a particular issue at that airport and the guy wasn't alone in the tower. But that may not mean there were a bunch of controllers on the line dealing with flights. So the NTSB is going to want to understand that. And it's the same questions, Ed, that came up during the DCA crash a little over a year ago. Controller workload and controller staffing, these are big questions again today.
It would sound like 13 or so months later, 14 months later almost, the concerns haven't necessarily been addressed if you have a guy still sitting there an hour after this happened, fielding flights and not able to process it or even begin writing down or processing what had just happened for the sake of the investigators. Quite something.
It certainly begs a lot of questions that the NTSB is going to need to answer. And, you know, there is a staffing issue with air traffic control generally. They are thousands of controllers short. The New York airspace is particularly complicated, so you can't just surge controllers in there to add some resiliency. It can take a year or more to certify a controller to operate in New York.
Right.
So controllers who started working to get ready to work in the New York City area last January are probably just about now actually fully certified to do that.
Right. Real quick, 20 seconds. You've been calling out every day the call-outs by TSA agents at the big airports across the country. We have a map that shows this. 42% change in New Orleans yesterday, 41.5% of those staffers in Atlanta, 38% at BWI, 40% of Houston. They're going to miss their paycheck on Friday. How concerned is the aviation industry and those in aviation more broadly about what could transpire here in the next few days? How critical is it for Congress to act?
It's very critical. I think the airlines, the flyers are very concerned. People are missing flights. And when you start talking about half of the officers scheduled to work not coming in, it starts to beg a question of, can you staff your checkpoints? If an airport can't staff the checkpoints, that airport essentially is shut down for the day. And I don't think we are too terribly far away from where that starts being a conversation some airports may have to have. Can we even staff our checkpoints today?
All in the midst of spring break. Kris Van Cleave out in Los Angeles. Thank you, sir. I know you were working late last night on this crash through the morning. We appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.